Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
And good morning to you. Blue sky out there, sun shining. Hey, here's some good weather-related news. Speaking of sun, yesterday's sunset was the first sunset we have had since this new year began that happened after 6 p.m. Just telling you, and it'll just keep getting better. As a matter of fact, in just 19 days, it'll set after 7 p.m. So sun worshipers, we're almost there. The reason that it'll be after 7 p.m. in just 19 days is because in the between now and then, daylight savings time kicks in. Would that we would just agree on one time and stick to it, please. And just other sunset news, because it's happy. So the sun is going to be out there now for a lot longer. And the next time it will set, as it did last night, will be November 2nd. So between now and November 2nd, guys, we're going to have, we're going to have lots of more sun, warmth. So that's just some news from the National Weather Service coming your way. If it makes you feel better, God knows it helps my spirits immensely. It is February 21. I don't know if I said that. And before we get into anything, wait. Right before the show started, I was reading the food section of the New York Times, and I was reading a recipe for a roast chicken, 1 pot creamy chicken and noodles. And I came upon this line in the directions, which cracked me up. When the chicken looks like it's giving up the will to hold itself together, remove the pot from the oven. When the chicken looks like it's giving up the will to hold itself together, that's a riot. And it reminded me that there have been many other times that I've looked at a recipe and found a line like that sort of anthropomorphizes the food and what you're doing with it. It just it blew me away. I mean, the other day, and I can't remember what it was, but it was something like giving, you put something in after something else, and you keep it there until it appears that they've gotten friendly or something. Stuff like that, saying that they're all like, one big happy family, all those flavors and textures. And it's funny. I am the kind of cook that I have to follow directions. I don't do freestyle very often. I don't trust myself. But so I end up reading a lot of, but I just love this one. And I might have to try to make this because I want to see if I can actually myself determine when the chicken looks like it's giving up the will to hold itself together. If I can pull that off, then I'll feel like I'm I'm a cook. I can tell that chicken is giving up the will to hold itself together. Okie doke. I got some news. It's about the show. And the show is going to be a thing sort of in progress. It is going, I have been studying with the producer how to do the show by myself. You know, to do everything on the technical end that has been being done for me at City Paper, so that I can be a one-woman band. And, you know, I'm not particularly tech savvy, so this has been a stretch for me. But we're doing it slowly, and tomorrow, I guess, will be the first time we're going to give it a little bit of a try where I will have the equipment here at my home, and then next week as well, and Kevin will accompany me so that if things go awry, he'll be here to save the day, but then he's going to have to let me be on my own. So we might be heading into, and so the good news for all of you is that the show is going to remain as is and available to you wherever you get it, whether that's City Paper or YouTube. That will still be the case. The change that will be temporary is that I have only thus far come close to mastering getting myself on. Getting callers in has always been the much more complicated part of the show. And I guess technically made us not a normal podcast, you know, being live and taking calls. This is where we retained the sense of a talk radio show. So as soon as I feel really like I got the first part down, then I will start learning how to get calls in. And that might take, you know, a little while. I don't know. But all that is to say that I think today may in fact be the last day in a little bit for you to call the show. For those of you who call, most of you don't. But there's going to be a hiatus on calls until I can, you know, learn how to do the whole dang thing. And, you know, without getting myself so bollocks up, I can't put two words together and then the content goes to hell. So that's what's happening. Okay. Just decided to keep it literally in-house, my house. And I've, you know, I hope that my brain remains pliable enough at this advanced stage to be able to, make this transition. So I think we can. And all of that is just for FYI. Okay. Roger writes, my wife and I were talking about Alabama's Supreme Court decision. Yeah, a lot of us were talking about that, right? Which prompted my wife to ask, can you now claim the eggs as dependents on your taxes? Yeah, well, that's what my sister said yesterday. I mean, have they thought this through? If these are children, then I'm sorry, the IRS says that if you have children, those are dependents, and why the hell couldn't you claim them? I think that's a perfectly legitimate question, and shows, is one of the ways to show the absurdity the extraordinary absurdity of this ruling, this dangerous ruling. And you know that when we talk about the dangers of the Trump party and the Christian nationalists behind it, and the Christian theocracy that they want to impose upon us, and you realize how many justices on our Supreme Court are totally on board with that. This is no laughing matter. In fact, speaking of the justices totally on board, perhaps you saw that Justice Alito wrote in a decision, a statement, I guess, because the court, I guess, refused to hear a case, but he wanted to be heard on it. And it involved a sex discrimination complaint, employment discrimination complaint, but that involved a gay relationship. And in the course of the picking a jury to hear this case, certain jurors were asked if their religious beliefs prevented them. Well, let me hear exactly what the question was. How many of you went to a religious organization growing up where it was taught that people who are homosexuals shouldn't have the same rights as everyone else because it was a sin? And people who answered that that was what they were taught and that's what they believed were not allowed to be seated as jurors. This made Alito go berserk, and he wrote a statement saying that people who oppose homosexuality, he apparently does, risk being unfairly labeled as bigots and treated as such. And he went on to say, this case exemplifies the danger from the court's decision, the Obergefell decision, that allowed gay marriage, which he was opposed to, which he dissented from, along with, of course, Clarence Thomas. And just not to alarm my homosexual friends, only 2 members of the Supreme Court that ruled in favor of gay marriage are still on the court. 2. And that's Kagan and Sotomayor. And we know we got 2 absolutely opposed. That would be Thomas and Alito. And some of the others are definitely up for grabs. Now, if we continue down this path of mixing Christian theology with the law, as the Alabama Supreme Court has just outrageously done, then gay marriage is in definite jeopardy. So just keep our eyes open and on the ball. And hell, if you're in Georgia and you got some frozen eggs somewhere, man, you just you got a deduction on your tax return. That's wonderful. I read some more about that. I read more of the ruling, the decision, and you cannot make it up. I mean, I shared some of it with you yesterday. I mean, where God, good God, the wrath of God is, I mean, it reads like a Christian fundamentalist screed. And in particular, the Chief Justice of the court is the one who in his what do they call that when it's he's agreeing with the general, but he writes his own little separate thing. And this is the guy who went just off the rails. And these fertilized eggs, I kid you not, were called extrauterine children. Extrauterine children kept in a cryogenic nursery. It'd be laughable if it weren't chilling. Cryogenically chilling. Extrauterine children, yes, romping around in their cryogenic nursery. Make no mistake, these people are like the Christian Taliban, okay? And these are the dead fast, I mean, the absolute will never quit Trump, who, of course, is the least religious person probably ever to be in the White House. He has no religion. His religion is Donald Trump. My God. So just beware. The dangers we are facing are sort of in many ways unimaginable, unthinkable, but no longer so. Because now the most draconian Handmaid's Tale dystopian vision you can conjure is possible. You know, that fascistic strain that has always been in this country, and you know, probably from day one, but you know, if you just look at us, and if you know the history, and if you understand that, you know, Hitler actually looked to American law to see how you disenfranchise and dehumanize citizens, because we were the exemplars with the Jim Crow laws. And you see the willingness, the sort of yearning for autocracy run by the right people. There's so many, you know, good books written about it, both fiction and nonfiction. And that in any way, Lindbergh should be seen as a hero, or Henry Ford as a hero. These men were fascists. They were bigots. They were anti-Semites. And they loved Adolf Hitler. And he loved him right back. But we're not taught that, are we? Huh? So we're talking again about, you know, the fact that we don't learn our own history. And it's one of the reasons why these same Trumpers are so desperate to control books, classrooms, what teachers can say or not. I'm reminded of an obituary that I read recently. I never heard of the guy. His name is Charles Salas. He lived 89 years, died recently. And he was brought up in Mississippi. And he attended Mississippi schools and, in fact, graduated from Mississippi State University with a degree in education. And then he went on to teach. And he learned a history that was bullshit. And he later, as he educated himself more, started to realize that he had been taught just bullshit. As I said, he was taught that slave owners were benevolent, that Reconstruction was a horror because of these ignorant slaves, being given power. He was taught that white supremacy was the order of the day. And he was not alone. Because if you look at textbooks, even textbooks here in the North, you don't have to be in Mississippi. Oh my God, do they gloss over the story. And we were told, I'm sorry, I thought I heard someone knock on my door. Guess not. Might have been a woodpecker. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. So I bring him up because he decided that he needed to write a history book of Mississippi. He was only going to write a history of the state of Mississippi. And it would not teach what he had been taught. It would not omit the horrors of slavery, of lynching, of the Ku Klux Klan, of Jim Crow. It would actually even talk about all of that and the civil rights movement, none of which anyone educated in the South loved. And we wonder how this racism is perpetuated. It's taught. Back to that South Pacific song. You have to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8, to hate all the people your relatives hate. You've got to be carefully taught. So he wrote a book, and it was called Mississippi, Conflict and Change. And it got rave reviews, and school boards throughout Mississippi went berserk. The state textbook purchasing board barred its use in schools the minute it appeared, and it took years. It would take 5 years of court battles against state officials. It would take a trial and a federal judge's order in 1980 that Mississippi accept the book. Amazing. You've got to be carefully taught. Got a caller. Hi.
Hi, Lynn. This is Beth. I thought
Hi.
with you saying this is the last day you could possibly accept calls for a while, I might try.
Good. I'm glad.
Something you and Susan were talking about yesterday, and I forget whether it was either in the Post or the New York Times, but the Bill Kristol piece about, the Democrats need to use Putin as kind of their Willie Horton.
Right.
And the thing I thought was, but you know what? The Republicans had something that the Democrats haven't had for years, and that was a Lee Atwater type. He's the one who took out Hart with monkey business and confessed on his deathbed, supposedly, that the thing was made up or set up.
Right.
We don't have that type of person. Like, I don't understand why within, some of the Democratic circles and everything that we don't have these types of strategists. I mean, I think the closest we may have had was a James Carville.
Yeah, I was going to say James Carville.
Would have been probably the last one.
Well, we've always been, wanted to play by, the rules. And we didn't stoop low. But no, I think gloves off. Gloves have to be off in this one. And I get the impression that I think they will be. I think they will be. I don't think the Democrats are going to make that mistake. The stakes are too high, and they know it.
Well, they were high with Hillary. I mean, we knew it was dangerous, but we thought, Hillary was safe. And then it just cracks me up. You have someone who lost the election with that Robbie Mook who headed up her campaign. And then you have them on channels as a political strategist for what not to do. I mean, it just drives me. Yeah. As someone who kind of grew up watching the game, so to speak, in politics at a high level, and just seeing kind of how it's being portrayed, I do. I want that Liz Cheney attack dog for the Democrats.
Well, I do too. But I can't. I'm sorry, I can't believe that there won't be. I just can't believe it.
Hopefully, we'll hear behind the scenes who our new James Carville SOB will be to attack these folks.
In some ways, excuse me, Beth, I was just thinking, in some ways, I think, and I think there's a feeling that you use Trump to take down Trump. That
I think,
he's what we've got going. I mean, you can string together the things he said, the reality of what he's done, what he's accused of, what he's convicted of, all of that, and the chaos that he brought, and the violence that he begot. And I would think the vast majority of Americans would say, no thanks.
Well, the one thing I was thinking of, too, is also doing an attack on his enablers, and the one thing I didn't know whether it'd be like a Daily Show type bit but you start going out and just start referring to the Ted Cruzes, the Hawleys, just refer to them what they're his bitches. That's all they are. It's time to start using that sort of pejorative against them. The Marjorie Taylor Greens, whoever you even think is kind of, we think they're really not drinking the Kool-Aid like a Marco Rubio type, but they're just in lockstep. Yeah, they're your bitch. And then you know what? Then you show people who've stood up to them. Yeah, you know what? Not his bitch. And it's all women.
You know who I think is doing a little bit of that is, Biden now has a TikTok account, I think. Yeah. And I guess they're putting, or not TikTok, maybe it's TikTok, one or the other. Instagram, I don't know what, here I am, an old person. But they're putting stuff out that is just constantly ridiculing and making fun of Republicans and Trump. I guess Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, was down kissing Trump's ass this weekend, or they go on recess. They all go on vacation. when they've done nothing. Ukraine being bombarded by the Russians, and they can't. And he goes down to get his marching orders from Trump. And the Biden account posted a picture of Trump and Johnson. And it was captioned something like, "The Speaker of the House meets with Mike Johnson." Ooh. Essentially saying, yeah.
Well,
it's the Speaker of the House.
I like the odds. It seems like the new thing of if you go to Mar-a-Lago, you're not going to have your job anymore. So one could only hope, but at least hopefully Ukrainian and Israeli aid is passed before we have more dysfunction in the House. And as far as the whole Alabama embryo thing, oh my God. Well, first of all, someone said, IVF was it's from what I've heard, it's incredibly expensive.
Very.
So are you now going to put the people who have the means, so we're not talking poor people that are doing IVF.
Oh, no way. No way.
Are you now going to put somebody in jail because, hey, we only wanted 1 out of the 6 embryos that we had to use? I mean, it is just absolutely ludicrous. And to follow that idiocy, the Mensa group in my state of West Virginia in the House of Delegates just passed a law allowing 14 and 15-year-olds to work without school-issued work permits.
I didn't get your sarcasm at first, and I'm thinking to myself, there's a Mensa group at the West Virginia legislature? I thought, what?
No, they wouldn't even know how to. They don't even know how to color inside the lines, Lynn. I mean, highlight search would be too, educated for them. But yeah, they're taking it out saying, well, they want to give it to the parents, not the schools. And the thing is, first of all, in this state, when you look at, child labor at the turn of the century, the 20th century.
God. Oh my God.
This was the most abusive child welfare thing in the country, especially with coal mining.
It was coal mining.
And
stop and you're allowing where these people want us to go. These are the good old days for them. Child labor, women pregnant and shut up. Men ruling the roost, straight white men, everybody knowing their place, their position. Yeah. This is what they want.
Well, so that was what I woke up to this morning, seeing that this measure passed. And, at least you had, yes, there are a couple Democrats in our House of Delegates, but luckily I think there were 10 at least sane Republicans that said, no, you can't. There's a reason why we want to make sure these kids are in school. And it's also another safety checkpoint so that, those employers aren't taking advantage of those children. Because for a lot of the parents, if you're sending your kid out at age 14 and 15 to work, it's a household need. Yeah. It's not because it's the betterment of the child. And I guess, again, I speak from this because, I started work when I was 14, but it was for an internship at a very young age. And going through that process. And I remember having to go get the work permits from my high school or principal at the time. And there was a check to make sure, hey, how many hours a week are you working? This, that. Which at that point made no sense, but looking back at it, made perfect sense.
Yeah. Oh boy, Back to the Future. Yeah.
So anyway, thank you, and hopefully you'll get the equipment running so we can possibly chat.
Hopefully this addled woman will learn quickly how to get you guys back into the mix. Of course, you can always still email me. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye. Oh gosh. So, my Lord. Here, I always love the letters section. I found a letter I really, really, really liked. And it was in response to a piece about how Trump has destroyed so many things, our sense of right and wrong, truth and falsehoods and norms decimated. And he has also destroyed friendships and riven families. He is a destroyer. And a guy named Robert Nussbaum in Fort Lee, New Jersey, writes this: I look at people differently now. For most of my life, and it now stretches into its 8th decade, I believe that the overwhelming majority of people were fundamentally good. At least they were pointed in the right direction, even if they were sometimes rough around the edges. But with the insinuation of Donald Trump into our lives, our brains, I no longer harbor such positive assumptions for the rest of humanity. Now, my default position is, if you have abiding love for Donald Trump, you are a deeply flawed individual. He has poisoned the well, made me question the basic nature of humanity. If there is one thing beyond all others that makes me so furious with him, it is that he has stolen my rose-colored glasses. I now look at far too many with jaundiced eyes, no longer seeing them in their best light, but tinted now by my belief about the hardness of their hearts and the shallowness of their thoughts. They do not deserve such reprobation, and I do not deserve to have my perception of our innate goodness ripped away. But such is the lasting, terrible legacy wrought by a man who has done nothing but make this the divided and diminished state of America. I'd say that was pretty right on the money. And we have another caller. Hi.
Hello, Lynn. It's Dave from Washington.
Dave, how you doing?
Well, funny you should ask. I think I have COVID.
I know. I was going to say, you don't sound too good.
No, which is why I'm home from work today. But anyways, real quick, you said something at the beginning of the show I disagree with you with. Changing the clocks. First off, if we kept the clocks at the same time, it's either going to be, well, first off, I like it being light in the summertime, late at night. But if we kept our clocks at that time all year long, that means the sun doesn't come up until like 9 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the winter, and I hate that. I'm a big believer in shaking things up every now and then just to keep you on your toes anyways. So twice a year we move the clocks around. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Years and years ago. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, I mean, the reason we first did it, right?
It's for farming.
Was farming, because farming. And then I also think the war played a World War, I don't know. But the reasons don't exist anymore.
That still isn't. Yeah, I know. There's no reason for kids to have the summer off from school either, because that's the same sort of thing. They'd be out farming, doing the crops. But that's now just staying. That's just the way we do it. So, but
go ahead.
Okay. The next thing. Oh shoot. Oh, years ago, I called you and I had mentioned to you how anybody who now identifies himself as a Republican, I just completely shut him off. And you're like, well, you can't do that. And my exact example to you was, imagine if you found out that your family member, unknown to you, was a card-carrying member of the Nazi Party, or the Ku Klux Klan or something. And at the time, I thought I was being a little hyperbolic. I described them to a T nowadays. Very prescient on my part. And yes, I have lost friends. I don't talk to people. I just don't understand how you can see what's happening, especially with Trump, and find that acceptable. They think this is a fucking TV show.
I do. I agree with you. I agree with you. Their heads have been formed by the entertainment complex, consumer culture that we live in. And they can't discern between news and a reality show and all of it. That's absolutely right. They think they're in a big, incredible show.
Yep, and they've got their own reality star TV guy. Now, if Biden, here's the way I see Biden. He's uninspiring. He does not enthuse me to do anything whatsoever. But he's a highly effective president. I did not. I didn't vote for a song and dance man to entertain me. If he was 20 years younger and could make everybody laugh and, was a good-looking guy, what have you, he'd be one of the most popular presidents ever because he's very effective. He just does not have that TV star persona. So you hear about, he's just an old, doddering man. Well, so what? That's okay. He's still very effective. He's doing a good job. The fact that he's old.
Yes, he's an effective, old, doddering, honorable man who knows more about the way things work and the world than Donald Trump will ever. No, he's not
a fraud. He's not a sex offender. No. He doesn't have 91 felony charges against him. He doesn't owe hundreds of millions of dollars in penalties. But the people who support him, they don't care about any of that. No. They're just like, they don't believe all the court cases and everything. It's all a hoax. It's all made up. Oh, come on, people. It's a willful ignorance on their part.
Right.
But this is the world we live in. They've spent, decades and a lot of money trying to dumb down the American population, and it worked better than they could have ever imagined.
Yep.
So
I don't disagree with the thing you're saying.
And Putin is laughing.
Oh my God!
Now he's comparing himself to Navalny. He's now saying he is Navalny, and the state is going after him. Oh, that's just laughable. Of course, it took him a couple of days to come up with that.
Yeah,
that's another thing. One of these big things happens, and he's like, "All right, well, now they got to sit back. They have to get their little script writers together and come up with a line. And usually they got to wait for Fox News or somebody to come up with it first. But then once they've got it, boom, there you go. Then they run with that, and all the sheep say, "Oh yeah, that's it exactly." They start repeating it, and there you go. All right, well, I'm going to go. I'm going to go lay down because I feel like hell.
Well, do you have a test? Have you taken a test?
No, because I don't have any. What's the point? Okay, great. So I know what it is, or I don't know what it is. Who cares? It's just, I just feel like shit. There's nothing I can do about it except just kind of rest and make myself feel better.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Lynn.
Be well. Bye. Be well. Okay. Bye-bye. Good God. Okay. Kurt writes, if a person wants to be frozen on the cancer that revving them in the future might be possible. What? Reviving them. Okay. If a person wants to be frozen, you don't mean cancer, on the chance that reviving them in the future might be possible, they're frozen upon death because freezing them while they're alive would be murder or at least prohibited euthanasia. Okay. Just trying to find more insanity because of this. If embryos are people, then how can it be legal to freeze them in the first place? There you got it. That's a good question. That's a good question. If they're people, how can they be, frozen? Good one. Jesus H. These people. Help us. Oh, man. Okay. The other thing, speaking of Putin, by the way, this informant this, what's his name? He's got a great name. Smirnoff. The ones that the idiot Republicans, Alexander Smirnoff. This was their smoking gun evidence that Biden, the president, and his son were on the take, accepting millions of dollars in bribes from Ukrainian business. This is what the Biden impeachment is based on, and the hunting of Hunter Biden by the Republicans. And lo and behold, their star witness is now sitting in a jail. The Justice Department having charged him with not only making it all up, but being essentially a tool of Russian intelligence. So here you have Putin and Russian intelligence giving the credulous idiot Republicans the witness they wanted to get Biden. This is how much Putin and Russia and the Republicans of the Trump party are intermingled and entangled. This guy is now thought to be, essentially, I guess he'd be a double agent. He has ties, they know it, significant ties to Russian intelligence. And he took the Republicans down a rabbit hole of BS and absolute lies created by Russian intelligence. It's incredible. So he was charged with lying to the FBI. He is, of course, his indictment and what's called a detention memo that goes along with it suggests that all of the evidence that the Republicans were touting that he had given them, that they were not only false, but quite possibly a Russian intelligence inspired operation. If the American people do not vote these Republicans, these Putin poodles, out of office, then we're in. It's beyond me. I mean, the more you learn, it's just beyond me. But I guess if they're living in some other reality, which they are, they have their own TV stations, their own people they listen to, who just feed them lies, lies, lies. Unbelievable. Because Smirnoff has repeatedly claimed close links with Russian intelligence officials. He, in fact, was planning to meet with them. He was on his way to get out of the country. The detention memo says Smirnoff's efforts to spread misinformation about a candidate, that'd be Joe Biden, continues. And what this shows is that the misinformation he is spreading is not confined. He is actively peddling new lies that could impact U.S. elections after meeting with Russian intelligence officials. In light of that fact, there is a serious risk he will flee in order to avoid accountability. So they want him held. He has significant wealth. Okay, so that's the extraordinary news, the big news. And what does the New York Times have on its front page? The only news about Biden, Hunter, that has anything to do with Hunter Biden? Here's the headline. Hollywood lawyers' largesse toward Biden's son draws ire. If there's a way to find a negative and make the story about something the Democrats or Biden is that puts them in a negative light, nowhere in today's issue did I find anything about Alexander Smirnov and Russian intelligence essentially being behind the slam dunk evidence for the Biden impeachment. Excuse me for screaming. But it is so maddening. Robert Reich, who I read his Substack column, he does a big, long piece on the dangers of dynastic wealth. And this involves a Pittsburgh fortune, the Mellon fortune, and involves Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He points out that if Donald Trump somehow wins in November, he'll owe his victory in no small part to one of the richest Americans alive, alive in 1920. And that would be Andrew Mellon, Pittsburgh banker and industrialist, who became the Treasury Secretary. He held the position for Warren Harding, Calvin Coolidge, and Herbert Hoover. It was often thought that Mellon essentially ran those three presidencies, Harding, Coolidge, and Herbert Hoover. And he was responsible in that role for changing U.S. tax policy in ways that allowed, his now grandson, one Timothy Mellon, to contribute $20 million to Trump's super PAC and $30 million to the House Republican super PAC, and that was in 2018. Another $30 million to the Senate Republican super PAC, and now $15 million to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s super PAC, which of course shows how much Trump's candidacy is relying on RFK's candidacy. So Timothy Mellon, who supports Trump, is not only supporting him monetarily big time and all his other, acolytes, but RFK Jr. This guy's got so much money. He's the one who gave $54 million to Texas Governor Greg Abbott to build a border wall. And Robert Reich points out, this guy, of course, never earned a penny. He inherited it. And he goes through the Mellon family history. Thomas Mellon started his own bank in Pittsburgh in 1869. And he attracted depositors like Andrew Carnegie and Henry Frick. And within a relatively short time, this guy had a bank that was the largest private bank between New York and Chicago. And this guy, Thomas Mellon, was a horror show. He promoted suicide as the decent thing to do if you were poor or criminal. Here's a quote from him. If criminals were sufficiently public-spirited, they would manfully rid the world of their presence and society of the expense and trouble of their trial and punishment. He saw the acquisition of wealth as a mark of merit and poverty as a failure of character. How does this not sound like, Republicans today? He said in his autobiography that voting rights were responsible for many of society's ills. He was a racist beyond you can't even imagine. And his two sons, Andrew and Richard, were brought into the business. And it is Andrew who then becomes the Treasury Secretary. And in partnership with Frick, those sons created another bank, the Union Trust Company, which became even more successful than Mellon. So Andrew helped Harding become president, and then Harding made him Secretary of the Treasury, and he held that position for the next 11 years. There is no other person who held a cabinet position like that in the history of the country. And it was a Nebraska senator who said that 3 U.S. presidents served under Andrew Mellon. And so he's the one who cut the estate tax and tax and tax and tax. And so, and now it all comes down to Timothy. His father was Paul, remembered as a philanthropist and a breeder of horses. And this Timothy is a horror. He argued in his autobiography that expanding social programs have only made Black people more belligerent. This is the current Mellon billionaire, the one funding RFK and Trump. Wow. So Robert Reich says this, and I'll end with this. The Mellon money trail exemplifies the perils of dynastic wealth and why we need a wealth tax in America. Or at least the capital gains tax must be applied to the appreciated value of assets held during someone's life before they die and hand them off to their heirs. When he was a Virginia legislator, Thomas Jefferson sought legal ways to prevent the perpetuation of great fortunes because he feared the rise of what he called an aristocracy of wealth. Well, we got one now, don't we? An aristocracy of wealth, which Jefferson believed, and these are his words, would pose more harm and danger than benefit to our society. We trace the Mellon money and where it's going today, and that proves that young legislator, Thomas Jefferson, was prophetic. All right, guys, that's it. When next the show comes to you, it'll be coming truly from my dining room table. God help us all. Have a good one.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.